Thank you for tuning into EdUp, The Experience. Now don't miss another powerful voice in our network, the EdUp Accelerated Excellence Podcast, for which I, Jacob Easley II, PhD, PMP, am your host. The EdUp Accelerated Excellence Podcast brings together researchers, policymakers, practitioners, and advocates, all working toward one goal: advancing educational excellence and equity. From grade school to grad school and learning in traditional and non-traditional spaces, join us for conversations that span the entire continuum of education. Listen wherever you get your favorite podcasts or visit us online at edup.com. That's EdUp Accelerated Excellence at edupxe.com. EdUp Accelerated Excellence, where we learn with and from one another.
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Well, you can go to edupexperience.com. That's edupexperience.com and become a subscriber today. We're excited to announce the first of its kind higher education podcast conference, brought to you by Edu Alliance, the EdUp Experience, and Podium. This is happening Saturday, July 12th at the University of Illinois Chicago campus. This is an in-person event, one day only, the first of its kind. This is for people working in and around higher education who are interested in starting a podcast, who may have a podcast, want to learn more about podcasting. So if you want to be there, please go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn how you can get your early bird registration, see who the keynote will be, and how you can submit proposals to be a part of this amazing inaugural conference. So that, again, go to higheredpodcon.com to learn more.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Solucio back with you on another episode here as we move ever so closer to 1,100 total episodes of this podcast over the last 5 years, over 500,000 downloads, telling the unique, interesting, and important stories of higher education through podcasting here at EdUp. And also, as I have been saying repeatedly on every episode as of late, we also want written stories. You know, a lot of times you're out there, you're writing. There's only so many places you can put your higher ed writing, right? You could look at the higher ed trade publications. Sometimes they want material. If it's not negative, sometimes they don't want it if there's not an angle. But what if you have a great program? What if you're doing something unique that you want to tell the higher ed community about? Well, you can come on EdUp. You can talk about it verbally, or you can write us an article or write us an article for EdUp Editorials, which is a part of our website. We've begun publishing articles by our colleagues in and around higher education about innovations, things that we should have an eye on, stories we need to tell. So you have anybody on your campus, yourself included, that wants to write an article for EdUp, you can submit it to edup@edupexperience.com. Pretty easy to remember, edup@edupexperience.com. Send us your articles. We'll publish them. We'll get you a link. We'll celebrate them. Send them out to our global audience that we have here at EdUp, and of course emailing those articles out as well. So anyway, that's just another way we want to serve the industry, to tell the story, the important story of why higher education is valuable, how we keep it valuable, how we differentiate ourselves as institutions. And you have to come on. You got to talk about what you're doing. If you don't talk about what you're doing, nobody knows that you're doing it, right? So the old adage, if you can't be found, nobody will know that you're there. I used to say that when I was overseeing marketing in higher ed. I would say, if nobody can find us on Google, and nobody's going to ever know that we're here. So you got to have good SERPs and good search results. You got to tell your story. Somebody that's going to tell his story today is the president of the university. I'm going to bring him in right now. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Dr. Burton Webb. He's president at the University of Pikeville. Dr. Webb, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing okay today. It's good to be here.
So I want to just paint the picture. You can tell us where University of Pikeville is for anybody who's listening and doesn't know. But I knew this, but then when you came on camera, for all of our listeners who are not going to see this because we don't produce any of the video, you've got guitars hanging behind you. You've got a little bit of the bluegrass flavor in that office that you're in. So where is the University of Pikeville? Tell us about the area.
So we are located right in the heart of Central Appalachia, the far eastern tip of Kentucky. I am about 2 hours in every direction from an interstate. So we have to drive at least 2 hours and 20 minutes to an airport. That's the closest one, usually about 3 hours to get to an airport. No real public transportation back in here. It is truly in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. And in fact, the Hatfield-McCoy feud was settled on our campus.
Surprise!
Years ago.
How do you like that? When you say settled, what does that mean exactly?
Well, that means that the official settlement, when the judge shut the whole thing down, resulted in the hanging of a young man who they convicted of several things that he may or may not have actually done. The hanging actually occurred at the foot of our science building on campus.
Now, that's a little piece of history, isn't it? Love that.
It is. Yeah.
Well, and these are important stories. Higher ed has been around for a while. Institutions have been around for a while. And we're in a time now when we're seeing rapid technology adoption, new things sort of disrupt the model, as it were, but also give us the necessary perspective of how important it is to do what we do, which is educate the public. There's a lot of misinformation coming to kids these days, adults, the news. How important is what we do in higher ed, and what separates the University of Pikeville from your peers?
Oh gosh, it's absolutely crucial what we do, and it's not only what we do in the undergraduate level. It's a lot of the educational programming that we provide for students who are still in high school, who come here to be undergraduate students, and then who return here to be graduate students and physicians and optometrists and dentists in another year. So, all of those things are important to the mission here. They help us to improve the economic opportunities for people in this region who have been largely left behind by the world around us. So we're very focused on that mission and moving it forward.
You brought and you can talk about this as much or as little as you would like, but when you say students who are left behind or people who are left behind in the area has been hit over time by a crisis, an opioid crisis, a drug crisis. It has affected the Appalachia, greater Appalachia area. I've talked to college presidents in different states around Appalachia where there's just such a commitment to trying to revitalize some of these areas, to bring education to the community so that I don't know, not that people wouldn't fall into those traps of, but to help them economically recover to a wave of, I don't know what to call it, but misinformation is maybe the word of the day, and really affected the areas. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you see?
Yeah, I'd actually back it up a lot further than that.
Please
I'd probably go back into the 1920s or so. Coal mining industry was just beginning in the early part of the 20th century. And it went through a series of boom and bust cycles, usually related to the price of coal, nationally and internationally, what was going on in terms of the war and the Industrial Revolution in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and then more recently, how coal has become more difficult to get access to. So at one point in the 1980s and 90s, there were more millionaires per capita in the little town I serve, Pikeville, Kentucky, than anywhere else in the United States.
Amazing.
Now think about that. That is a lot of wealth that was right here. But then, the easy coal started to disappear. Natural gas got a whole lot less expensive. Alternative energy sources have gotten less expensive, and the regulatory process for coal has become more onerous. All of those things combined took, 20,000 jobs that paid over $100,000 a year, and like that, they disappeared. So what do you do to recover from something like that? Well, I think you need to begin to realize that diversification is important.
Yep.
Diversifying the economy away from a single industry, no matter what that industry is absolutely crucial. And that's the process that we have been engaged in at the university, but also at the community level for quite a while. How do we bring in other companies? How do we create our own companies? How do we function as entrepreneurs and enter the high-tech space? Because you don't have to be located in one of the, Silicon Valley or anything to be able to do that. So, how do we participate in that? And I think that's been one of the big goals for this institution and for this region for quite a while.
One thing that I know has got to be on your mind, Burton, is recruiting students. When you're a rural institution, you got to bring them to your institution, especially if you don't have a major airport close. You want to keep them in school, right? So you've got to make sure the retention is high. You don't want somebody to feel like, they're missing home or something like that if they're coming from somewhere else and decide to just kind of leave. And then thirdly, you want to graduate that student, right? Enroll, retain, and graduate, but keep them in region. To contribute to the economy. This has got to be something that's always on your mind, right? Because you talked about bringing in business, looking at ways to diversify and expand. You only do that with an able workforce. You got to keep them there. What do you think?
Yeah, all true. Recruiting students is always an interesting project. About half of our students come from this region. They come from within probably a 100-mile radius of us. The other half are mostly student athletes, and they come from all over. And that is largely dependent on our coaches who go out and do the normal recruiting processes to bring student athletes in. We have about 70 international students who come and find this to be a great place to study. It doesn't have the distractions of a big city.
Any particular country you're recruiting that you have students from, or just everywhere?
They're really all over the place. I think I've got 70 students from 36 countries.
Nailed it.
So, yeah, they really are from everywhere. Most of them come on short-term visas too, so they're going to end up going back to their home country and providing services for whatever they've learned while they're here. But a lot of other countries outside the U.S. don't have college sports. A lot of people don't know that. But if you're a tennis player and you want to keep playing your sport and you're not good enough to play pro, and you're from Colombia, your opportunities end after high school. Right. So it's nice to have a place to be able to go and do something like this. So anyway, recruiting is a challenge. We do recruit pretty well within that 100-mile radius. One of the things that's unique about Appalachia is parents want their kids to stay home, and they know that if they go away to college outside of Appalachia, they're probably not coming back. So they're much more likely to send them to a place like us that is still home. So that helps us. But then retention is another big issue.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Well, again, unique statistics, right?
No, that's okay. I was going to ask you why that is.
Yeah, unique statistics around Appalachia. They're kind of fascinating. The average distance that a person lives from their mother in most of the United States is about 30 miles. In Appalachia, it's under half a mile.
Conceivable!
I know. Families are so close here. They really are. They're close and tight-knit, and they really want to stay in their area if they can. Retention was a big issue for us. When I started here, our retention was below 42%. So not great. And there were all sorts of things that were going on that were wrong about that. We weren't recruiting the right population. We certainly weren't doing the work we needed to do to keep them. And they were leaving usually in that sophomore year, taking off. But this last year, our retention crossed the 70% threshold. Wow. And we're moving our way up. We're going to get into that 80% overall before too much longer. And that makes an enormous difference in the lives of the students when you can retain them all the way through to graduation. It has been tremendous. Our biggest challenge right now is when the students graduate with a college degree, what do they do to keep them here locally? And so we hired a new business dean a few years ago, and I challenged him to use the power of the business school and the grants process to begin to create new businesses using the ideas generated by our current students, and then to spin those businesses up into functioning businesses that we could spin out into the community.
Like a Shark Tank.
They could begin to hire. And so we're well down that road, and our first business should spin out next year, and then we'll have something else that comes in behind it. So we're going to begin creating the very industries that we need to have to hire our own students, because that's probably the only thing that's going to help this region. So I'm not waiting for Toyota to come and put a plant here. Not going to do it. We're going to start our own businesses and get them out there.
Well, the good thing about businesses and startups is there's a lot of money out there from investors. So, one of the ways to bring in more businesses is if you get a really unique startup there and they take some, funding and they set up there and they start hiring employees, all of a sudden another business spins out from the university. And all of a sudden somebody says, Dr. Webb, we'd like to invest in this Shark Tank that you got going on here. I mean, that's a hope, right?
That's actually the reality. We have about a dozen investors who have worked together to create an angel fund to start our business startups.
Victory!
Well, see that? I'm always a step behind here at the Edip Experience. At least today I am. Didn't sleep that good last night. My questions are a little slow today. But no, I mean, that's fantastic, right? Because you're creating industry in service of the university.
Yeah, we spent a fair amount of time 2 years ago on MIT's campus in Boston. And one of the things that we noticed there was that they were extraordinarily good at taking ideas from their researchers and scientists and spinning them out into functional startups. And so we studied that. We actually spent time studying how they did that, what were the key factors that allowed them to start small businesses. And myself and several other entrepreneurs from the area went and did a deep dive. And so we're trying to replicate what they're doing at the MIT REAP program so that we can get that going here.
Let's go.
I like that. One of the ways that we can work in higher ed is by best practice. Somebody who's doing something, it can resonate with our community. You're not competing with MIT, but you need business and industry in your region to help your region. MIT doesn't care necessarily about coming to your region to recruit students, right? I mean, so sharing that best practice is about how we serve the industry. It's about how we create generational wealth for families and students in areas where there's lower economic or disadvantaged students. I mean, this is how we work as an industry, right?
It is. It's exactly how we work as an industry. And that's why MIT and other organizations are willing to partner with a place like us so that we can stand up and do some of the things that they've been doing well for a long time.
Speaking of doing things for a long time, you've been a president there for a couple years. What are you in your 9th or 10th?
I am in my 10th year.
10th year. So congratulations on upping the overall average. The average of a college president tenure right now, I think, fell below 5 years. It's like 4.7 years right now. That's it's a travesty. But it speaks to the difficulty of the job and the times at which we live in. I know there are a lot of trailblazing presidents out there that walk into an opportunity. Well, they get the opportunity to earn it. Either the board isn't as supportive of they thought. Sometimes the faculty, there's negative inertia that's on the campus that was unexpected. And all of a sudden, all the innovation that I wanted to do as a leader, I can't get it done. So I got to go somewhere else where I think I can do this, right? Because I can't sit stagnant. How have you evolved over the last 10 years as a leader on your institution to get to a point where you can do some of this stuff where you go, we're going to invest in businesses, right? Other campuses out there, probably some even in your state, will go, well, we're not doing this. This is not what we do. We need to run it through 50 committees first. But what have you done over time to get to a place where you can be innovative?
Well, I think some of it's just longevity. At least 25 to 30% of it is being in the same place for as long as I've been here. It simply allows you to form the relationships that you need with people in the community and people on the board that allows you to move forward. And so I think that's a part of it. I think a part of it is a faculty who is curious and willing to do some really innovative things. Part of the secret sauce is probably crisis. When we looked at that retention rate as low as it was, and then we had the pandemic, and then we had, other economic challenges that come through, you get the flexibility to do some things that are creative and innovative. And then if you're fortunate, work hard, all of the above, and they work, well, then you get trust. And trust really helps you to keep that moving. You think of the flywheel, right? If you can get that flywheel moving, then really good things start to happen. And I feel like we got that going right before the pandemic. And then it could have slowed down, but my provost and others said, no, this is the time to just stamp on the accelerator and do all the things that we've wanted to do that are innovative. And so we've been able to get an awful lot done because of that.
Epic.
In a region where you need to get things done too. It's not right because nobody else is doing those things in that region. The community relies upon you to support it, to help it. So is there added pressure in that way because you're so ingrained and localized to the Appalachia community? I can't say Appalachia community. I'm having trouble today, Dr. Webb, I'll tell you.
About it.
Is there an active additional pressure, responsibility? What do you think?
I think there is, but it's helpful when the other three major industries in the town are willing to get together with the university on a regular basis, talk about our challenges, and talk about ways that we can create solutions.
So you always have a seat at the table, basically, to say, "Hey, we're going to help you provide a workforce here, right?"
Absolutely. So we have a major bank in the area. It's got about $5 billion that they mostly invest in local projects throughout Central Appalachia and Eastern Kentucky. We have a hospital that is a tertiary care hospital that's right here in the valley, and the coal industry, of course, is represented by folks. And then we cooperate with the city to try to get as much done as we can. And those conversations happen on a monthly basis, and we just keep our eyes focused on what we're trying to accomplish as a city and as a region. And then we have an agenda to move things forward every single month. So that's what keeps the ball rolling in a place like this.
So University of Pikeville, UPIKE, better known as UPIKE, offers a unique experience for students. Differentiation for colleges and universities is a very hard thing to achieve, but necessary, right? There are a lot of colleges out there. Some look really similar. Is the education really that different? But UPIKE offers some really unique pieces. You want to talk about the uniqueness of UPIKE overall? Take it however you'd like.
Yeah, this is really interesting because in many ways, my colleagues, when I go to presidential meetings, they just shake their heads at our campus and say, "You guys are a unicorn. We can't replicate what you're doing." So we had fallen to about 500 students back in the early 1990s, and the board at that time was trying to give the college away. If you had any interest in running a college, they would have given it to you.
Yikes!
Yeah, but in the 1990s, a couple of local business people got fed up with their physicians turning over every 3 years, and they did that because all the doctors came in on public health service. They'd pay off their commitment to the federal government, and then they'd jettison and go to a big city. And they read an article that said that if a doctor trains in an area, they tend to stay in an area. And so the two of them said, "We're going to put up $1 million each, and we're going to see if we can get a medical school to start here." And they approached the University of Pikeville, and in 1997, we opened our doors and accepted our first class of physicians, our first class of medical students. And they graduated 4 years later in 2001, about 50 students in that first class. And that has grown year over year since. And I think we are now at around 145 students in each class, 550 students. We've graduated 2,200 physicians, about half of which still serve in Central Appalachia.
Outstanding.
So that has made an enormous impact. And then in about 2015, we saw data that said that Owsley County, which is just 2 counties over from us, is statistically the blindest county in the United States of America, highest rate of preventable blindness in the U.S. And we said, we've got to do something about that. So we started an optometry college in 2016 and graduated our first class in 2020, which I still contend is a great year to be an optometrist. That's right.
Hindsight, right?
So we graduated that first class right in the guts of the pandemic, spring of 2020. And they went out and they're serving people as optometrists. We've now graduated about 400 optometrists in the area, and they're serving people all over the region and starting to spread out across the country, which is also a great thing. One of the things that has helped us in that regard is that Kentucky has one of the most advanced scope of practice for optometry in the nation. So we still get people from all over the country who want to come and learn how to do laser surgery on our campus, because there are only 2 other campuses where they can do that. So we're moving that forward. And then just a few years ago, We looked at a feasibility study for starting a dental school. We had a very generous family, the Tanner family, who approached us with the idea and said, we want to help to underwrite it. And the Tanner Family Foundation wrote us a $25 million check. And that has helped us to move forward. And we plan to open the Tanner Family College of Dental Medicine next summer in 26. So we have our accreditation visit.
Kind of a nice increase. Nice increase from those first $1 million donations, a $25 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's been really good. And in addition to the $25 million gift, I think we have another $10 million in federal and private grant money, and then probably another 4 or 5 in private philanthropy for that. So it's moving forward in really good ways. So again, we have these undergraduate programs that are great, and they've grown to about 1,200 or so students now, full-time students. But one of the things that's unique, that was where the question started, was our undergraduate students who are interested in medicine, optometry, or dentistry can apply for medical school in the junior year of high school.
Oh, wow.
And they can get accepted into our medical school as first-year freshmen. And all they need to do is maintain a GPA and get a certain threshold score on the MCAT, and they get direct admission into the medical school. That has been a 4+4 up until, we hope, next year. We're working on a curriculum proposal so that all of those programs will be 3 years in the undergrad, then 4 years in the medical school, and that 1 year overlaps. They'll get a bachelor's degree, and then they'll get their medical degree in 7 years.
Now you're talking.
So knocking a year off of tuition, trying to help people to be able to financially afford and get out with a lot less debt so that they can serve wherever they want to and whatever specialty they choose.
Also, what you're doing too, I think, and I talk a lot about this, and I bring it up probably to the point, so frequently to the point people probably just turn off when I'm talking. But loyalty in higher education is an important thing. Typically, we're one-offs. Go for undergraduate, and then you go out. Most students don't go right into their master's. They'll go to work, and then they come back for their master's. Next thing you know, like me, I have 3 degrees, 3 different schools. I never even remember anybody talking to me about continuation. It was never even a thought that I had. But especially if you're a rural institution, you have a student who's there, who you can create a single educational opportunity that arms them with multiple degrees over time. You're hitting all of these checklist boxes, right? The loyalty to UPIKE. You, as an institution, as a business, have that student for a longer period of time, so you can help them out. You're taking in more tuition revenue, but at the same time, you're helping them save over time because you have a reasonable tuition rate. So it's a win-win for both parties. And then that student is coming out completely prepared for a career because they have the multiple degrees that they need. They've spent the time invested in the campus and the region. And then all of a sudden they go, you know what? I love it here. I've been here forever. I have a job opportunity waiting for me. So you create I call it the Marriott rewards model for higher education. It doesn't exist. We have to create it. We have to create this loyalty. It sounds like you're coming up with ways to do that.
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
We're working on it, and I like the idea of Marriott rewards, though I'm kind of a Hilton guy myself. I know, but it's a good thing because I do think that the way higher education is moving right now, we're going to see the need for ongoing education across the span of a career, and maybe even multiple careers as folks change jobs. So why not create a model where the college is looked to as the first place to find whatever content you need to continue to advance in your own career path. And we've been working on that for a long time. We have some partners involved in that with us, trying to create the sorts of online, industry-recognized certificate programs that someone can come back and gather those certifications throughout their whole career. And they may end up with 3 degrees from us and 10 certificates by the time it's all done.
And I like what you're saying, because it creates another variable we have to consider as we market to students, especially if they're alumni, right? We want you to think of UPIKE. If you're in the region and you say, oh gosh, it would be great if I had a digital coding or digital marketing certificate, UPIKE's got it. I got to talk to them first. I'm not going to talk to these other providers, although albeit great. The reason why a university is important is because it has this validation. We validate. We have degrees, even in non-credit. If you get it at a university, it comes with a certain validation because we have faculty and we have standards and we have all these things that we sort of move by. But then there's like 1.2 million different credentials out there. It's the Wild West. You can get them anywhere at any time for any reason. Nobody's validating them. Students are stacking them, and the employer goes, "What the heck are these? I don't know how to look at this." But if you know it's from UPIKE, you know it's connected to something, you know it's connected to some curriculum. But then we have to make sure we have some kind of model, like subscription model. Can a student pay $100 a month for the next 30 years and come back and take any class at any time if they want to, if it's a non-credit certificate? Like we like subscriptions, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and we have all these subscriptions, and you just go, what's that next model? I bet you're thinking about that.
We are. Yeah, we're thinking about it. The subscription model is an interesting one. Universities tend not to do that right now.
Yeah.
But there are an awful lot of other organizations that do. Coursera's got a subscription model. School communities have a subscription model, and Patreon and all sorts of other things. So we're trying to figure out what the niche is and how we might be able to fit into it. It's easy to be a content provider inside someone else's subscription model. It's more difficult to be a subscription organization and provide a lot of different content and manage that. So we're investigating what that looks like from a lot of different perspectives, including the legal and revenue sides.
Good for you. It's this innovation that we need in higher education. And I love to see our colleagues in rural institutions really thinking about the region and thinking about innovation at the same time, because you can get numb in this industry. We can assimilate to some cultural factors that, I don't want to say prevent innovation, but sometimes create barriers to it. Talk about recruitment. I'm just sort of changing subjects, but recruiting employees that you need to teach these courses, to be at the at UPIKE, to service these students. That is a whole nother thing when you're in a rural institution, isn't it?
It is. So it's kind of interesting. When I first started almost 10 years ago, recruitment was a huge issue. We had a very difficult time recruiting people to come because we're so far away from everything, right? But it's become less of an issue as time has gone by. And I think a part of that is the prevalence of high-speed internet.
Yeah.
So, if you have a trailing spouse and they need to work, they can often find a job that is a remote work job. So that has made a big part of the recruiting process much more simple than it was. In the last 9 years, we've had a 2-lane road that has become a 4-lane road almost all the way here from Lexington. So, it was a 2.5-hour drive when I landed here. It's about 2 hours and 10 minutes now. And once the road is complete, it'll probably be an hour and 45 minutes. So it's knocked a lot of time off of that. And then the final thing is, when you create a culture at an institution that is as engaged and as supportive as our culture is here, people want to be a part of it. And when they get into it, they really don't want to leave, because we have something that's so unique here. You go to work at a university in a big city and you're just an ID card that swipes in, swipes out, you teach your classes and nobody cares. Here, if we find out that you fell and cut your head open, that happened this weekend, and you're in the emergency room, you'll get a flurry of texts in the emergency room, and within an hour of you being home, you've got 2 people in your house providing meals, providing something you need, and taking care of you, because that's the culture we've built. So, and that's from executive level all the way down to staff. We just have tried to reinforce that culture where we talk about the UPIKE family, and a lot of places do, but we have it at a whole different level. And that has allowed us to be able to recruit folks who then retain because they get here, they want to stay here. And that's been good. It's been part of the secret sauce.
I like that.
The family needs to come together during tough times. You've had some recent disruption, some severe flooding in the region. Can you talk about the flooding, the impact, what's happened to the university, to the students? We feel for our colleagues across higher ed when we have to deal with these issues, these natural disaster issues. It affects families, students, economic impact, so many things. Can you tell us how you're doing and what's going on?
Yeah, well, first I would encourage all of your listeners to take a look at our website and just see what the terrain around us looks like. We live in very steep river valleys. Most of the river valleys, at the base are only 75 to 80 feet wide. They're very narrow. Most of them have a stream that runs down them. And some of those valleys are miles long. So if you get a heavy rainstorm that happens at the top of that valley, all of that watershed comes right down into the valley and immediately goes down into the river. So our little town used to have a river that ran through it. And in the 80s, a mayor who was very insightful actually moved the river, moved it outside of town and built flood walls. So the city itself didn't flood and frankly doesn't flood anymore. But that river is a major river that's just a little ways from us. And this last year, because of the way that the rain fell, actually a couple weeks ago, it fell in Virginia and filled up a reservoir that was in Virginia. It filled up the reservoir that was between us and Virginia, and both of those dams had to open to let pressure out at about the same time. That caused a wall of water that was 52 feet above its base to come through this region. Now, it didn't all come at once, so it just kind of raised. But my dean of students had put marks on trees by the river, and it went up 3 feet in 16 minutes.
Wow.
So that gives you some idea of how much water there was coming down. Well, when the valleys are steep like this, you can't build on the hills. You build in the valley.
Right.
And so when the water comes up, it's going to flood people out. And that's exactly what's happened. People's homes and businesses have been flooded, many of them all the way up to the bottom of the first story of their buildings. So anything, kitchens and living rooms and all that stuff has been lost. And this is not an area that's new to flooding. We have a lot of flooding that happens here. We had major flooding 2 years ago that killed several people because it was flash flooding. So, we're recovering from that. The institution is playing its part. Last I talked to the dean of students, he said our students had served 1,700 volunteer hours in the last 7 days.
It's amazing.
Helping people clean up mud, and we're a storage facility for donations and distribution. And it's been a really tough thing, but anytime you have a tough thing that takes place, you have an opportunity to pull together and to serve. And that's exactly what our people have been doing. And we're really proud of the work they've done.
Community helps higher ed. Higher ed helps the community. This is what we do. It takes great leadership to do it. I'm going to bring you back for a subscriber-only episode, Burton, just in a few minutes to talk about your leadership. But I do want to leave you with the final word on this episode and ask you if there's anything else you want to say about UPIKE, and then tell us what you see for the future of higher education.
Well, I talked about the dental school project. That's one of our major projects. The other one is that because of these steep valleys, we're very limited in footprint. So my whole campus sits on 14 acres. Most college campuses are 100 or more. And so to try to mitigate some of that, a couple of years ago, we bought an abandoned strip mine. And strip mines around here are mountaintop removal. So we got 42 acres of buildable flat ground and another 500 acres of hillside. And we're in the process now of building a multi-phase athletic park up there. So football, soccer, track and field, cross country, downhill mountain biking course, archery, softball and baseball, bass fishing is up there. We've got all kinds of things going on out there. So that project is ongoing as well. I would say that's one of the big projects that I want to get finished up before it's time for me to, slip into the background and play guitar. So those things are good. And then the second question was, where's higher ed going?
Yeah, what do you see for the future of higher ed?
I think that's anybody's guess right now.
True.
I can speculate all we want to on this, but state and federal policy are going to drive a lot of that. I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen at the federal level right now. At the moment, we're filming this in the beginning of March in 2025, and there's just a lot of chaos right now.
Truth.
So what's going to happen with the Department of Education? What's going to happen in the Trump administration? Congress and Senate, we don't know what they're going to do. They're working on passing an omnibus bill that may contain all kinds of crazy things that we'll just have to figure out how to deal with as time goes by. We just don't know. But I think that, in terms of the broad scope of things, AI is going to be a major, major disruptor to higher education. And if we don't get our act together as an industry, we're going to get left behind.
Artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I am watching what's going on with some of these online providers, some of them that I mentioned a few minutes ago. The things that they are doing to shift education into that low-cost private sphere is far more disruptive than MOOCs ever were.
Yep.
So we've got to pay attention to that. We've got to stay with it. We need to get our own house in order so that we can begin to offer content in a way that is easily accessible through AI and teach our students how to use it in the industries they're going to see moving forward. So I think that's the major disruptor that we're going to see over the next 5 years.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Another incredible episode. Again, we're going to bring Dr. Burton Webb back for a quick mini episode for our subscribers only, but you got to subscribe to hear it. Let's outro him the way he deserves with a little guitar. Ladies and gentlemen, he's been my guest today. Maybe not a bluegrass guitar, but here he is. He's Dr. Burton Webb. Can you hear that? Little Ozzy Osbourne. He's Dr. Burton Webb. He's the president at UPIKE. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just ed-upped.
Higher Ed PodCon is coming. Go to higheredpodcon.com. That's higheredpodcon.com to learn more. Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.